With high-profile Leave campaigners, including Boris Johnson and Michael Gove, setting up a new campaign to deliver Brexit, Labour's former Shadow Business Secretary Chuka Umunna is looking to hold them to the promises they made during the fierce referendum campaign. And top of the list, of course, is the pledge to give £350 million, maybe £100 million more each week to the National Health Service. Well, Mr Umunna joins me now from West London, and a very good morning to you. Whether the money's going to go to the NHS eventually or not, the fact is, as we all know, we haven't left the EU and we're still paying in, and will be doing so for several years.
Well, that's right. It obviously depends on when the Article 50, this famous provision of the European Union treaties, is invoked that starts the two-year negotiation process. But you're absolutely right, Dermot. There were a whole series of promises that were made by the Leave campaign, and you've seen the successor organisation to it being launched today, Change Britain, which, as the Conservative supporting website Conservative Home has dubbed Continuity Vote Leave. You were right to mention the £350 million per week, which we were promised would go into the NHS after we have left. Of course, they made a series of other promises too, not least that we would be able to continue trading with the European Union after we leave on the same beneficial terms that we trade with them now. They said that leaving would enable us to scrap VAT on household energy bills. Of course, importantly, they also promised that EU citizens in the UK at the time of the referendum vote would be given the right, guaranteed the right to remain here in the UK. So there were a whole series of promises that were made, which the organisation that I chair, Vote Leave Watch, is aiming to ensure people are held to account on. And I use that phrase very specifically because, of course, there will be some promises that the Leave campaign made that you wouldn't necessarily want kept. But I think it's important, both from the point of view of the 48% of people who voted for us to stay in the EU, but also the 52% who voted for us to leave, that the promises upon which this campaign, which won in the end, were made, that people are held to account on that and scrutinised as to whether they delivered what they promised.
And where are you on giving people another say when the smoke all clears, if it ever does clear after all the negotiation is done and dusted? Do you think there should be some form of vote?
Well, I have to say, and this is going to disappoint some people who campaigned on the same side as me during the referendum campaign. As you know, I came on your show many times making the case for us to stay as part of the Britain Stronger in Europe campaign. I think we have to accept the result. We can't, because we've now lost, complain about the rules under which the referendum was fought. Now, of course, there were misleading claims made and there were myths propagated. But I think in the end, what drove me to argue for us to stay in is because I didn't like the divisive politics and setting up different groups against each other, which I thought some, I use that word specifically, some in the Leave campaign kind of peddle. I don't like that kind of politics of division. And ultimately, if we're to move forward as a country, we've got to try and heal those divisions and bring people together. So for that reason, I am certainly not calling for a second referendum now. And in fact, I've tried to get a deeper understanding of why those who voted to leave did vote to leave. I represent a constituency, Streatham, which is in the borough of Lambeth, that recorded the highest Remain vote in the country. I went during the summer and spent a day in the constituency of Boston and Skegness with the Conservative MP there, and that's in an area that recorded the highest Leave vote. Now, some people think that those who voted to leave are somehow bigoted, prejudiced and racist, and there are a small minority of people who might fit into that category, but that isn't really what I found in Boston. It's a lot more complex than that. And the nice thing, in a way, was that the challenges and the reasons that people voted to leave in Boston were the same challenges and difficulties that we have in Lambeth. So there can be a meeting of minds there, and I think now part of all of our job, and I do welcome the kind of overall tone of the article that was written in The Sun on Sunday today by Gisela Stewart, who is heading up this new Change Britain organisation, is to work out how we can actually bring people together. But that doesn't mean that all these promises that were made during the referendum campaign by the Leave campaign, which was victorious, it doesn't mean that those should be just discarded and forgotten. But I think there's a real opportunity here, Dermot, for the Prime Minister, because I think she could, if she was clever about this, she could prove both Remain people, Remain campaigners and Leave campaigners wrong in the course of the Brexit negotiations.
Mr Umunna, what about your own future and ambitions? You're standing for chairmanship of the Home Affairs Select Committee.
I am, yes. I was already a member of the committee. I am a member of the committee. What drove me to put myself forward for election as a member of the committee were the many issues that arise in my own constituency that the Home Affairs Select Committee looks on. For example, Streatham, we have one of the biggest African Caribbean populations in the country, and yet you're more likely to be stopped and searched, to be charged, to be put through the criminal justice system if you're of an African and Caribbean background. And there are lots of other issues that we're looking at, like female genital mutilation and prostitution, which are also very, very prevalent in my constituency. So that's why I'm putting myself, in part, why I'm putting myself forward to all MPs, because the chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee is elected by all MPs from all sides of the House. I decided to put myself forward this week, having been encouraged to do so by members of Parliament, not just on the committee. A lot of the members of the committee wanted me to put myself forward and are supporting me, but from people across the House.
Just want to get a word in and just examine the in part bit, because it's said perhaps this is symbolic of the so-called big beasts of Labour heading for other jobs because of what's going on with the leadership. There we've got Andy Burnham going for Mayor of Manchester, Sadiq Khan already in London. Are you looking for other ways to influence things?
Well, I always said when I left the Shadow Cabinet in September last year, and it was by mutual agreement of myself and Jeremy Corbyn, the leader, that it would probably be better for me to support the cause from the backbenches. I always said at that point that I never subscribed to this view that the only way to make a contribution in Parliament was by being a front bencher, whether that's on the on the government side or the opposition side. And I look at some of the fantastic work that colleagues have done over the years from the backbenches, where they've actually changed laws and helped improve things. Stella Creasy, the MP for Walthamstow, all her work trying to clamp down on legal loan sharks, or the deputy leader of the Labour Party, Tom Watson, when he was on the backbenches, and the work he did to ensure we had better regulation of the media and the press. I think both those things illustrate that the only way, the only way of making a contribution is not on the front bench. And, for us in the Labour Party, once we do get the result of the ongoing leadership contest on the 24th of September, and, hands up, I nominated Owen Smith and I hope he wins that contest. But afterwards, we've all got to work out how we can move forward and work together to advance the Labour cause and, most importantly, win the general election whenever that comes, because ultimately that is why our party was set up. We were not set up to be a protest group or protest movement, and I do believe protest is important, but we were set up to be a parliamentary operation looking to win power to implement Labour's values in office. And ultimately, that has to be the goal, getting the Labour Party elected, and that requires a broad coalition, not just a small part of the left of the political spectrum, but a broad coalition of support and sentiment spanning from the centre to the left. Under our first-past-the-post electoral system, which I actually would like to abolish and replace with a proportional representation system, that is the only option open to us.
You'll abolish this programme. We're out of time. Mr Umunna, thank you very much indeed. Chuka Umunna there in West London.
Thank you.